Quick question. When was the last time you trained your feet? Not stretched your calves, not rolled a ball under your arch, actually trained the muscles inside your feet. Most runners never do, and yet your feet are the first point of contact with the ground. Every single step, thousands of times per run, as it's a repetitive sport running. So today we're going to deal with this. So welcome back to the She Runs Strong podcast, powered by Coach Parry with myself, Nikki Friedman, and Shona Hendricks. Today we are going to deal with one of Shona's favorite subjects. And it's really worth listening to the end because we're going to set out exactly how you can strengthen your feet and ankles and how to train your feet and load that into your training plan. But first, Shona, how are you and how is your training going? I know you've got a marathon coming up, so how is training going?
Yeah, things are good, Nikki. I've got some news that I want to share with everyone as well. It's not training related, it's work related. So just hold on to that. I'm going to share that at the end of the podcast. But other than that, life is good. December holiday was amazing. Managed to balance that well as per Shona, and got some good training in, got some good friend time in, traveled South Africa, which is just, well, not all of South Africa, obviously it's a big country, but just beautiful. A lot of the Eastern Cape in South Africa. And then we landed up in the Western Cape, and then we missioned from the Western Cape up to the Drakensberg, which is my favorite mountain range in South Africa anyways. And it's just spectacular. So lots of hiking. It's hard hiking. I mean, I can't even remember. I should have actually noted that the elevation gain that we covered in 6Ks is, I think it was like 1,200 meters of climbing in 6Ks. Oh, wow. So it's a very heavy hike. And we stayed up in the mountain for 2 nights. So amazing. But yes, training, got a marathon coming up in 2 or 3 weeks. And training's gone as well as it can. I mean, I mentioned in one of the last podcasts that, I wasn't quite up to scratch. And so you don't want to squeeze everything in and risk injury. So I've done what's needed and feeling okay about it. I mean, marathons are hard either way.
Yeah, they are. And all that hiking will have strengthened your legs nicely as well. So it's still time on feet, I guess, isn't it?
Exactly. How are you, Nikki? I know you've been doing some strength work.
Yes, all good. So I have been meaning to start back to strength for a wee while. I've always been quite into yoga and Pilates. I've always done strength training, but last year wasn't quite so good for me. So I started about 3 weeks ago, 3 strength sessions a week. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying being back in the gym and doing strength, proper strength. And so I've started quite light, 30-minute sessions, 3 times a week, full body, 5 exercises each session. And I'm just really enjoying it. And yeah, I'm just loving, do you know when you forget that you really enjoyed something, you've been out of it for a while, it's actually really motivating when you get back into it and you can feel the difference in your body. I mean, of course, I've had to go a lot lighter, but then almost within 3 weeks, I'm managing to get the weights up a little bit more. And I'm just really loving it. Of course, I'm running. I've still got goals for this year running wise, but I'm really loving having the strength training. So, but today we're talking strength training for the feet.
Yes.
So just bringing it back round to the topic that I started with there. So I train full body, but we are talking about foot core today. So what do we mean by foot core, Shona?
I mean, so it's an interesting concept. I mean, so it is something that a lot of coaches are talking about lately, and you mentioned it in the intro, is our feet are an aspect that the first part of our body that touches the ground when we run. And it's interesting, an ex-elite athlete that I used to work with, Caroline Wassman, she was a comrades runner, and she went on a training camp to Kenya for a while, and she had a sports massage. She said it lasted an hour and a half, and they spent at least 20 to 30 minutes on her feet alone. And it was then, and this is close to 10 years ago, 9-10 years ago, that the penny dropped for me. I was like, oh my gosh, we focus on core of our body. We focus on our legs, our glutes, our hamstrings, our quads. And yet we don't focus on the aspect that is like, probably the primary aspect. And so just did a little bit of research and it came into a lot of foot core of what people were talking about. So training the intrinsics or the core of your foot was more focused around just older humans, sedentary, to focus on balance and falling and to reduce the risk of falling and so on. But it really has grown within the running sphere a lot now. And it really makes sense because if something is wrong in the body is a chain, right? And so this is why we train our core, the trunk, because if something's wrong there, it might go down the body. It might, sort of present itself further down the body. And so at Coach Perry, we like to take it from both aspects. We train the core. We obviously train whole body and so on, like you spoke about. But then we also train the foot, because if something is wrong within the foot, that could present up the chain. So you could land up with a knee concern, you could land up with an Achilles concern, you could land up with a hip concern. And for the most part, yes, a lot of the foot core stuff, we'll dive into this a bit more, but around some foot injuries and Achilles and plantar
Yes.
fasciitis and so on. But essentially, long story short, foot core is working on the small intrinsic muscles in your feet. Okay. So that the bigger muscles don't necessarily have to take over. Okay. The body it's not lazy, it's efficient. So if the smaller muscles aren't working, the bigger ones just go, you know what, you chill, I've got this. Okay. And it takes over. And then that muscle gets tired, and that's often how injuries happen. And so we want to work on the smaller intrinsic, they're small little muscles in the feet, to make sure that those are working, so that the whole foot works, so that everything up the chain then works effectively. And for the most part, we live in, if I think about modern day shoes, and I'm by no means an advocate of barefoot running. So let me just say this, but the shoes we live in and work in, really do compress our feet, and our toes are quite squashed, and we never get any mobility or movement in there. And so I think, much like the rest of life, where life is becoming sedentary and we have to work on the core and we have to make sure
Mhm.
we're focused on that, it's the same with the foot as well.
Yeah, yeah. And just so, if you're talking, I mean, do we have a lot of muscles in our feet? Is there a lot of small intrinsic muscles
There are a decent amount of small intrinsic muscles that we don't work enough, for sure,
that we're not aware of?
that we're not aware of. I mean, yeah, I mean, oh gosh, you would be taking me back to first year anatomy with this, but
All right, okay.
like I will know some of the names of those, but for the most part, what's also happening, and this is as a result of modern day shoes and not really working, that is that those muscles are, that the brain knows how to innovate them, the brain knows how to get it going, but because we don't use it enough, the brain doesn't. So what we're wanting to do, it's the same with our core. If you think about our core, we have a deep transverse, it's called transverse abdominis within our, and you just mentioned around Pilates, very
Mhm.
often they'll teach you how to activate that muscle first, right?
Yes.
And now we need to do the same thing with our feet, because our feet are in shoes all the time. We're not using those muscles. Very often, a weak muscle is also very tight, right? So we often see that with piriformis or your glutes concerns.
Mhm, mhm.
So within the foot, we want to, one, get mobility so that we're not living in those squashed shoes all the time, and then two, start working on strength. So yes, there are enough muscles within the foot that we need to work on, and all of that is then linked to the smaller muscles around the ankle that stabilize the leg. Every time we run, we land on that foot, and there's an impact, and the smaller stabilizing muscles have to control that impact and then push you off again.
Yeah.
And if those smaller stabilizing muscles aren't strong, the bigger ones just take over, and then they get overused. And that's why we land up with things like plantar fasciitis, Achilles
Yeah.
concerns, etc., because the tendons are also under a lot of strain at the
Yeah.
same time.
So you've kind of answered my next question, why is it foot core so important for runners and um, lower leg injuries, I guess. And
Yeah. I mean, that's the first, that's the first thing that will come to mind is lower limb injuries. Because, and we deal with this, with females who are perhaps going through menopause, and we've spoken around how some people just struggle with aches and pains all the time, and so on, and chronic Achilles tendinopathies. And I have a lot of friends, male and female, who struggle in their 40s with plantar fasciitis. And again, I think
yeah,
it's just because of years and years of being in shoes and not working on these muscles. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's important to work on this foot core for that reason. So lower limb injuries, lower limb concerns.
it
Second
does.
aspect. Yeah, sorry. No, you go. No.
So it sounds like when you go to the physio, and I find that every time I go to the physio, I'm always told I've got weak glutes, and a lot of people have weak glutes, and you, so it's almost like you can take it as read. Most people have weak glutes,
Yes.
so we're kind of saying here most people have actually quite weak feet because of the way life is and
Yeah.
shoes and stuff. So really
100%.
everybody should be doing this.
Absolutely, 100%. So, like, take running out of it. I mean, that's where this stemmed from, was making sure that older adults, as we're getting, 60, 70, 80, are
Mm.
focused on the strength on their feet, so that we can prevent falls, because we know that the mortality rate with the risk of falling is there's a high
Yes.
correlation there.
Yep,
So
yep.
where that stemmed from. So absolutely, even if you're not a runner, this is important. I mean, my one of my friends who has plantar fasciitis, he plays hockey. He's not
Oh,
a runner. He's a hockey player, and he plays golf. And now he can't even play golf because he can't even walk. He went to Zanzibar on a trip, and he couldn't even enjoy the beach because his feet are so sore. And so, absolutely, I think every single person should be doing foot core. Just based on our lifestyles and the shoes we wear and so on. So from that perspective, yes, to prevent lower limb injuries, that is number one. Number two, as I mentioned, the body's a chain, right? So if there's something wrong at the foot, that doesn't necessarily mean that might be Achilles tendinopathy or plantar fasciitis. That might present up the chain, which means you might then, get a hip injury or a knee concern or something, because the body is so efficient at moving that energy
yeah,
around that impact might happen somewhere else. And so injury prevention is a big concern. But the second one is like efficiency, right? And so if to become a good runner, we want to be as efficient as possible. And so if you are running and not landing with the correct mechanics, not being able to push off with the right mechanics, you are not going to be as efficient. And so the stronger that structure is, that every time we land, the more efficient you are going to be as a runner.
yeah,
So again, injury prevention and
yeah.
performance are the
I
two
mean,
things.
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's your foot is just the whole starting mechanism, really. I mean, why wouldn't we look after our feet a little bit better? And
Uh,
um,
Nikki, sorry, on that, you say starting mechanism to the point that every time we land, there's an aspect of the running gait called the toe off. Okay, so which I know you know, but let me just explain that. Every time you land, your big toe pushes off the ground, and essentially, I know those of you who are listening, but imagine your finger. And you push off, and your finger or your toe would bend. That's a toe off. So as you land, your toe pushes off the ground, and that is the first part that starts your running gait. When we have your toe off part of the running gait, there's an activation that happens in your quadricep. So that's the first thing that happens when you touch the ground, is that activation goes straight to your quad. And so, yeah, it's wild to me that we haven't spoken about this more. That's why I love the subject, because
do
it makes so much sense.
you know, so I know I've just talked about it before. I broke my big toe once upon a time.
Yes.
A few years ago, it was in January actually, on a silly fall. But I was stunned at how much it impacted everything from then. I couldn't walk at all, and it was just a slight fracture in my big toe. Couldn't walk, couldn't weight bear, couldn't do anything. It
Yeah.
just affected everything, and you have no idea until you break a toe just how much your feet are involved. I mean, sounds nuts saying it, how much your
Mm.
feet are involved in walking. I mean, I couldn't walk. I wasn't allowed to drive. I couldn't run. It took 6 weeks to heal, and even then, I was sort of like doing this funny sort of walk on my heel. I couldn't heel toe. Um, yeah, that
Yeah.
really brought it home to me, how important my feet were, and actually even the shoes that I wore, and how to move and stuff. I mean, I'm constantly looking for good shoes that will help my feet, and I think that is quite key. But anyway,
Sorry,
so
no, sorry, before we go on, I love that point. And if I can just touch on that with the shoes, because I think that is such a key thing. I want to talk a little bit around why good foot core makes you efficient as a runner. So we can come to that. But with the shoes,
Mhm.
most of the shoes we wear, I mean, the only time you ever see me wear heels is if I'm going to a wedding or something. Okay. So
Yes.
I'm very seldom in heels, especially also because your shoes, your toes are squashed even more in
Yeah,
heels.
yeah, yeah.
That high heel, and it's not good for the Achilles and so on. So for the most part, I'm in sneakers, right? So I'm either wearing running shoes or I'm wearing a pair of Converse or something like that. That's sneakers, but it's still very restrictive for the toes, and that's why there are some shoe brands now. I know Ultra in particular is
Ultras, yeah.
focused on that wider toe box, and for that exact reason. And it is really, really important to have that space between your toes. And we'll touch on some things to do later, but I want to mention just around making sure that we get enough space in there, because there are different aspects within this. There could be someone who has, like me, as an example, I have what you would call the start of hammer toe, where your toes are a little bit crunched. So that
Mhm.
means at the top of my toe, if some people must do this at home, is just check. You can see all the ligaments at the top of my foot. When my relaxed state, it's like that, because essentially there's
Right.
too much tightness at the bottom. I don't have enough mobility at the bottom of my foot, and too much tightness at the top and weakness at the bottom. So I need to start learning to stretch out those toes to get some space in there so that then I can start strengthening it. And so, I am wearing shoes that aren't considered to be bad for your feet, but you still need to really work on this. And of course, we'll go into those
Okay.
in
Yeah.
some
That's
exercises.
really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it's really, eh, so you're touching on the fact that you've got a weakness in your foot and the other side is overcompensating. So I know at Coach Parry, we love to put this in our plans, and generally we do schedule it in the plan. So what can we do? How can we help ourselves with this? What would you?
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's difficult to explain the
No, no,
exercises
no, not
and
not
stuff,
necessarily. Sorry,
but
Nikki. Sorry, I know we jumped here, but I actually just want before we do that, I wanted to just talk around the performance aspect as to why that's so important as well. Sorry, I forgot about that. Everyone runs off, and if you go to, and you and I will advise runners, if they go to a running store and they go get, every
yes.
running store will try and tell you to buy an anti-pronating shoe, right?
Oh,
Because
yes.
the old school view is that you shouldn't pronate your foot. Because if you pronate your foot, your knee gets sore and then your hip gets sore. And in some aspects, that is correct. But the way the foot works is that essentially the arch of your foot is a spring. And it's called the windlass mechanism. Okay. So if someone wants to look that up, but essentially, when the foot pronates, the arch of the foot contracts and then it's like a spring, it shoots you forward again. So we need to have some aspects of pronation. Of course, overpronation and constantly doing that is going to cause an injury. But I'd far rather someone does some foot exercises as opposed to gets put into an anti-pronating shoe.
Yeah.
And if you watch the elites, I've actually got a video of it. I mean, I'm sure I can pop it on socials and so on. Elite track runners, if you look at how much they pronate, it is actually scary. Their foot completely pronates, but because they're strong, it pulls back and it works like a spring. And so that is how we get more efficient. So if your arch is weak and that's when you're going to get injured, is because it's not going to be able to get that windlass mechanism really strong. And so, yeah, I just think that that's another aspect as to how we can become more efficient as a runner, which is going to make you run faster as well. So I just wanted to, touch on that performance aspect.
Okay, so just not getting too much of a shoe that has too much support then in that case.
Yeah, I recommend to people to always start, unless pathologically, or diagnosed by a foot doctor of sorts,
Yeah.
start with a neutral shoe. I would suggest start in a neutral shoe and do the strength work. And I know runners are hating me as I'm saying this, but do the to ensure that that doesn't happen. Yes, if you are weak in your foot and you pronate, you are going to land up with an injury. And of course, but we can fix that so often with these foot exercises as opposed to getting arches in the shoe or an anti-pronating shoe. Because all we're doing is sticking a band-aid on the issue. We're
Yeah.
treating the symptom. We're not fixing the cause.
And running doesn't build that strength in your foot?
If you want to recover from sessions faster, not feel tired all the time, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join me in my upcoming training specifically for female runners over the age of 45. In it, I'll share with you my simple 5-step framework that'll transform your running. Simply scan the QR code on screen now or click on the link in the description to save your seats in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there. It does. It absolutely does. But you mentioned it at the beginning, running's a repetitive sport. So again, it's a fine line, right? So too much, and if you're weak, too much, the body's going to take that energy and it's going to it will land up causing an overuse injury. And what do most runners do? They start with too much too soon, right? And so
Yes.
again, it will absolutely help. Walking, of course, will help. But again, we're walking in shoes. We're not necessarily building that foot core. We're using something, we're using a prop to help us as opposed to, so I will very often at home, where I live, my landlords have a lovely back lawn with a swimming pool, and I'll very often walk on the lawn barefoot, just again to get that proprioception, that neural sort of activation. I try and walk around barefoot at home as much as I can. Again, we'll touch on these exercises in a bit, but I'll sit when I'm watching Netflix in bed and do some of these exercises. So when I'm at my desk, just trying to stay away from being shooed all the
All
time.
the
And
time.
so then when I am running, I've got the stability from my shoes, but I've also got the strength to hopefully.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what type of exercises do you
Yeah.
do? What
I
can we
mean,
do?
it's tough obviously to do this if you're listening to the podcast and even watching this.
Yeah.
But like basic things. So do yourself a favor if you're listening to this, whether you're at work or at home, slip your socks and shoe off, and just try and lift your big toe without lifting the 4 other toes. So I'm also doing it now. Lift the
I
big
can't
toe
do it.
without lifting the other 4 toes. And so that shows you, if you can't do that, that essentially all those muscles, the brain is telling it to lift the one, but all those muscles are confused. The brain can't innovate that one muscle on its own. So just do that as an example. So we call that toe yoga. So lifting the big toe and putting the others and keeping the others down.
Understand.
If you can't do that, if your other toes lift up, cheat a little bit. Okay. So put your hand and hold those 4 other toes down and try and then lift the big toe. So you're teaching the brain, I only want this one to lift up.
I know I was gonna do it, but
I
I'm
can
not.
do that, yeah.
You know, the funniest thing over Christmas, I was sitting with my brother, and he's a bad one for going around barefoot, and he was just sitting on the couch, just wiggling his big toes quite
Yeah.
happily without his others. And I was trying, and I was like, this drives me mad because I haven't ever been able to really do that. But he just can, and he does it all the time. He just sits watching telly, wiggling his toes.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do, is just
Yeah.
wiggle our big
Absolutely.
toe.
So moving that around. So again, because your toes are so stuck in the shoe all the time, they don't know how to move independently of each other.
Yeah.
So starting off there, lifting the big toe, holding the 4 others down until that point where and trust me, if you do this enough, it comes.
Okay.
You will get it. And then the progression from that is lift the big toe, put the big toe down, lift the other toes, put the other toes down. So that's where the toe yoga part comes in. So big toe, 4 other
Okay.
toes, big toe, 4 other toes. All right. And so that's a starting point of an exercise.
So do you do that kind of what, 10 times or something? Or
Yeah,
what?
10,
It's
10 to
like
15 times on each foot. In the Coach Perry plans, we have foot core overall twice a week. I would say whenever you're doing strength, so like just connect it to your strength so that you're getting it done. And it's 15
Mhm.
minutes, 10 to 15 minutes in total. So I would say 10 to 15 reps of the big toe lifts or the toe
Mhm.
yoga, whichever one you have. And obviously we have progressions on all of those exercises as well. Eventually, we want to have a band under the ball of the foot, and then you're lifting the big toe while holding the band down, which starts getting quite
Right, okay.
complicated. So yeah, that's a nice one to start off with. And again, that you can do while you're sitting at your desk, like or sitting watching Netflix, or like your brother at Christmas
Yes.
time. Something else we want to do, and again, you mentioned that with your brother's wiggling toes, is we want to start getting space in between those toes. So I mean, those things we use when we go get pedicures, right? And they put the toe
Yes.
separators. I mean, if you don't have to use one of those, I use my socks. Just
Yes.
weave your socks through your toes just to start getting more space in
Mhm.
between. That's a nice, and again, lying and watching Netflix at night, that's an easy thing to do. We're just trying to get some more space in the foot. If you are like me and you have that hammer toe sort of feeling, so if you feel like your toes are already quite curled, don't do this exercise. This is for someone who doesn't have that, who just feels weak. But you can roll out a towel. I call these like toe bicep curls.
Oh,
Roll
yes.
out a towel, put your foot flat on the towel, and try and crunch that towel in with all of your toes. Okay,
Mhm.
so very often it'll just be the big toe and the second toe that is strong at doing that. Try and get all of those toes to pull the towel in. Try not to lift the foot up like with the ball of the foot. Try and
So
keep it
that's
flat.
exactly what I was doing there. Right,
Mm.
okay. Yes.
You got to keep your
That's
foot flat
easily
and just use the
flat
toes
and
to
just use
pull.
the toes.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
that's
it's really
also
isolating down.
isolating all of that. 10 to 15 reps of that. If you are like me and you have that hammer toe, we don't want to crunch more, right? We don't want to make
Mm.
that problem worse. What you want to do then is lift the toes up, spread them like a duck's foot almost as wide as you can, and hold it flat for a few seconds. So up, widen out, so almost like you have webbed toes, and then hold it for a few seconds and relax. So those are like specific exercises for the feet. We do, yeah, you do want to
Those
like
are quite good really just to do even watching the telly at night,
exactly,
it's not that difficult to actually add those in. And in
absolutely.
fact, I'm just doing that sort of stretch the feet out and plant them down. Feels quite nice.
It does. It
Loosen
feels
up.
so lovely. I do it all the I
Yes.
really need to do it more, but it feels nice. Yeah.
So it feels nice. So,
Yeah.
they're kind of good things because your feet are a bit tight anyway from all the running. So this is quite a nice wee stretch, that one. Yeah.
Exactly. And so with that, with all the running, I do recommend rolling the foot as well, so
Mhm, mhm.
nothing too deep, take a hockey ball or a cricket ball or baseball, depending where you are in the world. And just after a run, after a long run, I love to do that just to roll the structures in the foot. Again, just to try get some mobility in there. So I find that's good. And then in the Coach Perry plans, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but in the foot core and the Coach Perry plans, we put in a few other exercises that help
Mhm.
the leg intrinsic, so that like your tibialis posterior, which is the muscle on the inside of your ankle. And so we do a lot of those, and it's difficult for me to talk you through those. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to
Those to
really.
me seem super important too, because I know like shin splints and Achilles and calf, there's just, I mean, they're just really common injuries with runners. And just, if you've got the kind of, I mean, I know we have to strengthen up and through the body as well, but really, I guess why wouldn't you just like look at your feet first, really?
Yeah, we'll work from both ways. Like I say, we work from the core up and down and then work from the feet up, And so one of those, which I can explain quite easily, which is quite nice to do, is take a ball, put it between your heels and squeeze that ball and do a calf raise. Okay, while you're doing a calf raise, you're squeezing that ball, and that'll work on that tib post, that tibialis posterior. That's a stabilizing muscle for your leg. So yeah, again, 8 to 10 reps of that twice a week is going to make a massive, massive difference. So, yeah, I just think those are the focused exercises. There's other stuff that you can do around your house. Like I say, I walk around in the back garden
Mhm.
barefoot. I do my strength sessions unless I'm in the gym, obviously, because they have certain rules. But if I'm at home doing it, I do that strength session barefoot. Again, because if you are doing an exercise, you want to try and feel what your feet are doing. Try and get that proprioception back to feel what you're doing, or do a basic stalk stand when you're making tea or brushing your teeth. Lift one leg and see if you can balance doing that. Again,
Yeah.
just that constant reiteration of working the foot, I think is gonna make a
Just
huge difference.
that if you don't use it, you lose it, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
that's it all the time. And even things like, I don't know, bar classes, Pilates, they do focus on your feet placement and
Mm.
those small movements as well. Probably not as good as quite isolating as you're giving there, but still, something is probably better than nothing.
Spot on. I mean, I saw, been following some specific deadlift and very sort of lifting strength, videos and following this course, and one of the things they spoke about with people who do a Romanian deadlift, so a straight leg deadlift,
Mhm.
they don't always feel it in their glutes. And it's often because they are standing with their feet slightly supinated, so it's
Okay.
leaning on the outside of their feet. And if you just focus on that big toe and pushing the ball of the foot down, it actually does start to get a bit more of the activation of the posterior chain as well. And so just those little things of your
Little
feet. Same
tweaks.
same thing with a calf raise. If you're doing a calf raise, people always, I see it all the time. They do a calf raise up, and as they come down, they roll out. And it's just because the stabilizing muscles aren't strong enough. So focus on keeping the emphasis on the inside of the foot there, on the big toe and the ball of the foot when you're going up and coming down, and you'll feel how that calf raise feels different. Um, so yes, I mean these are, I could talk about this forever, Nikki.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's really
Yeah,
interesting.
but
It's really
yeah,
interesting. Okay, well, I'm conscious of time and stuff like
yes.
that. Is there anything else you want to round off or some last
Um,
words there?
No,
And
so yeah, I think just, it just seems like a crazy thing as to why
why?
we wouldn't work it. So we land on our feet, we walk on our feet, so, and again, the body's a chain. So I think just keep that in mind, that if you're not working something, the body's efficient, it turns it off almost and then it moves somewhere else. So
Yep.
focus on that. And then before we close off, Nikki, I just want to mention yeah, that
Yes, your
news that I
news.
had. So if those of you who follow Coach Perry and South African and follow the Comrades
Mm.
Marathon podcast that we have, it's called Up. It changes every year because it's obviously up and then down. Brad and Lindsay, if you know, have been running those. But Brad is stepping back from the podcast. He's got a couple of other things within our Coach Perry business that he needs to focus on. But also, Coach Perry, we really are focused on the female athletes, and we want to
Yep.
also help Comrades grow the female participation at Comrades.
Runners.
Runners, yeah. So, I mean, I think it's only at 22% at the moment. And so we really, really want to do that. And so, yeah, been given the opportunity to co-host that podcast with Lindsay Perry, our head coach.
That
And so,
that's brilliant.
Yeah, if you are interested in ultra marathons, if you're interested in comrades, give that a listen. Yeah, it's the Up Run by Coach Perry. The Up Run
So
comrades.
if it's on all the regular kind of places that you'd find a
Yes,
podcast, and
yes.
it's up this
Up,
year,
yep. So
and
Up Comrades Marathon, and you'll find it. Yeah.
if you're looking on YouTube, is it a separate YouTube channel or is
Yeah,
it?
I'll get the team to put that into the show notes. But yes, it's also under a Coach Perry page. That where they are. But I will ensure that the team posts that
So
link
we'll
in
get
there.
the links on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So,
just to sort of, do you think you might be running?
I mean, yeah, we'll keep that a secret for
Never
now.
say never.
Yeah, never say never. I mean, I love the race. I mean, it's a South African. It's
I
one
love
of my
it too.
favorites.
It's just a fascinating race. It's amazing. Uh-huh,
Yeah.
and
So, I mean, I get emotional talking about it. I can't imagine what it'd be like running it. So
and
I
you
think I'll
well,
get
I mean,
dehydrated from the tears
yeah.
alone.
Well, I have I've
Yeah.
got one athlete who's heading for her 10 this
Oh,
year,
amazing,
a green
amazing.
number,
Yeah.
and, I'm really excited for her. Part of me just would love to be there to see her do it. Um, you know, it's the most awesome race. It's fast. I mean, it's just the whole nuance of it is just brilliant. So, well, I hope it all goes well with that podcast. That sounds excellent. Do go and give Shona and Lindsay a listen. When do you start? When do you kick off with that?
Probably next week will be the first one.
Next week. Brilliant. Right. Okay. Well, you can hear Shona in lots of different places now. This is great.
Yeah, we're gonna be tired of my voice, hopefully not. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. Okay, so that's us for today, folks. We will catch up with you next week. And that's us. Bye for now.
Good. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.